Right now, Marianne Williamson announcing her candidacy at an event in Washington, D.C. The author and spiritual advisor first ran in 2020, but dropped out before the primaries. Want to bring in Lindy Li, a member of the DNC's National Finance Committee, along with MSNBC political analyst and Republican strategist Susan Del Percio as well. Welcome to you both, guys. Thanks for joining us on this. Lindy, let me just start with you on this one, and wondering if you feel as if, because of this announcement now coming on from Marianne Williamson, that it will kind of put Biden in the hot seat, the president in the hot seat, to officially announce that he is running for re-election.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. I don't consider Marianne Williamson to be much of a threat. She's a spiritual advisor and a 2020 Oscar who may not even make the debate stage, let's be honest. I think the best way to handle her is not to address her at all, because I don't think many people consider her to be a major Democrat. And age is a concern for some, for Biden, but she's 70 years old. So she doesn't exactly represent a new generation of leadership either. And she has no platform to speak of other than some nebulous Department of Peace. And so she's not a threat to Biden. And I think many Democrats are rallying behind the president. He has been able to overcome historic headwinds like high inflation and the historical trends against the party in the White House. He's passed tremendous legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So Democrats are more or less willing to give him a second chance. The stakes are so high, we simply cannot afford another 4 years of Trump.
Susan, so with this news, of course, we have to talk CPAC as well. You just spoke with Ron Hilliard at the top of the show, right? And I don't know if the story is more about who's at CPAC or really who's not. They're calling it really TPAC instead, because the headliner being the former president of the United States. But some major players in the Republican Party, they're not there. We're talking Governor Ron DeSantis, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel, former Vice President Mike Pence, not there as well. What do you make of this split and what this says really about the possibility of Trump's waning popularity?
Well, 6 years ago, Kellyanne Conway said that CPAC is going to become TPAC, and she was right. It really did. This is Donald Trump's show. So I do give Nikki Haley, as the only other announced candidate seeking the Republican nomination for president, for showing up. I understand why the others didn't, but what's interesting is that the leadership, when it comes to being a presidential candidate versus being the establishment, especially when it comes to Speaker McCarthy not showing up, that is really telling when we find out what the value of CPAC is, which has now become just a kind of, Trump gathering, if you will. It used to be where conservative principles were discussed, ideas, disagreements happened, but they were about policy. Then it took a little libertarian bent during the Ron Paul years. But now it's nothing more than a Trump show.
Wondering if part of those conservative principles is the discussion of woke, because it seems like that has popped up a lot over the last 4 days or so. Let's play a little bit of that, Susan, and then we'll talk.
All this woke, transgender athletes, CRT, 1619, we don't teach reading, writing, and arithmetic anymore. Half the kids in this country, when they graduate, can't read their diploma.
Wokeness is a virus more dangerous than any pandemic, hands down.
I think we had to spend 4 or 5 days asking the Chinese spy balloon what its pronouns were before we were willing to shoot it down.
They really know how to brand themselves and what their crowd, Susan, wants to hear.
Except no one can define wokeness in the Republican Party. There's actually been stories on it. Ask any of these candidates to define what wokeness is. What does it mean? They can't, because it's just used as a baiting word, if you will, for hate. That's it, plain and simple. But when you listen to the Republicans that you just showed, you're talking about people who are finding a way to create the us versus them. And that was the Donald Trump way. And it was successfully political for Donald Trump, but it is just a us versus them.
Lindy, Nikki Haley she's in a tough spot. You know, she really wants to kind of thread this needle between, you know, I worked inside the Trump administration, but I want to separate myself from him, and I am a better choice than he is. And it seems as if she's now getting some flack for this needle that she's threading, because she was certainly heckled at CPAC. But let's take a little bit of a listen to some of the reaction in the crowd from her, and then I want to hear your reaction. Lindy, what do you make of it?
I think, frankly, she's running to be vice president, not to be president. I think she knows she has no chance against Alexa Trump and Ron DeSantis, and it's so cringe-worthy watching her walk through CPAC, taking selfies and trying to make small talk, when there are people shouting, "I love Trump," right behind her, and she has flip-flopped so many times it's hard to take her seriously. And I'm an immigrant myself. She's the daughter of immigrants, and to hear her, the daughter of immigrants, express support for the Confederate flag in South Carolina's Confederate History Month is just so incredibly alarming. I feel like she's a total sellout. And just going back to what we said earlier about CPAC, let's be clear what anti-woke means. It's anti-black, and I think people are very reluctant to say it, but I don't mince any words, and that's the truth. That's their way of, you know, sounding the dog whistle without being extremely explicit. And let's also not ignore the fact that CPAC has become a gathering of sexual predators. Let's be honest. Matt Schlapp, the chairman, was sued for $10 million for allegedly groping a male staffer on the Herschel Walker campaign. And then he shares the stage with Jim Jordan, who allegedly covered up sex crimes at Ohio State. And then he was followed by Matt Gaetz, who was just investigated by the FBI for teen sex trafficking. And then he was followed by Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's an adulteress. And then Lauren Boebert, who brags about carrying a Glock around Congress, and just this week threatened to blow up metal detectors. And then finally, tonight, we have Trump, a serial rapist. And so this is the party that claims to be the party of Christian family values, and I had nothing to say or do but laugh at that.
I just want to be clear here, though, you know, that it's important to put out there. We understand the accusations that have been made against, of course, the former president, Lindy, and of course, I understand your passion in this topic as well. But I want to be clear, of course, that none of that has actually rung true as of yet. Just they've all been accusations so far. Lindy Li, thank you. Susan Del Percio, thank you as well.